How can we develop the best leadership skills? That's the topic we're going to be addressing today on Flourish-Meant. I'm your host, Tina Yeager. Flourish-Meant is sponsored by Access More. Today, I have an amazing leader and an incredible woman of God to introduce you to. Her name is Bunni Pounds, and she is the president and founder of Christians Engaged. She was a political consultant for 16 years, and then she ran for Congress herself in the 2018 season. She was the only woman to make the Republican running ballot in Texas out of 6 open seats, and the only person endorsed by Vice President Mike Pence during that 2018 primary season. She's also a Bible teacher, a church planter, author of 8 books, including her recent release, Jesus and Politics. Welcome, Bunni. I am so delighted and honored to have you on Flourish-Meant today.
Well, it's great to be with you, Tina, and to inspire people to live their life and be leaders for the Lord.
In this second portion of our amazing conversation with Bunni Pounds, who is a tremendous leadership expert as well as a Bible teacher, I want to dive into some of those nitty-gritty details found in Nehemiah and in your materials that you use to help coach people through that leadership process in your ministry. How can people start that process of recognizing where they have influence and beginning to take steps toward where God is calling them to be a leader?
Well, we talk to people every day within Christians Engaged that are burdened for the country, they're burdened for, their city, their state, their schools. So first of all, what Nehemiah did was he heard the messenger tell them about what was happening in Jerusalem, that the defenses of the city were broken down. And he instantly responded to that burden. And he went to prayer and fasting, really was his first response. And I think, Tina, sometimes we do everything else but that. We try to figure out, or we try to ignore, or we try to find a secular wisdom on how to solve a problem. And a lot of times we're not digging deep in prayer, asking the Lord, what is this that's going on my heart? What is this burden that I'm carrying? When I'm watching the news, I'm seeing this, and this human trafficking situation is making me crazy. How should I respond instead of just passing it away and not responding well? So Nehemiah sought the Lord, and the Lord led him into action. And so what we try to do is help people identify the burden that they're feeling, the specific burden that they're dealing with, because when we look at our nation right now, there's so many issues. We can't all solve all of them. Even members of Congress that I've walked with for years, they can only deal with 1 or 2. They can't deal with the hundreds that they're even having to be listened to every day. So we have to say, God, where is our place on the wall? Where is our space in our community that we can make an impact? And that looks differently for everybody else, but we try to help people navigate that and pray through that.
And after you identify, I believe God is calling me to X ministry, X place of influence, what would be the next step toward really understanding how you can listen better and relate your way into serving in that capacity?
Well, you know what? We should be talking to people that are in that space. We should be listening and educating ourselves. Tina, when you go start a business, you don't just go start a business without researching what industry you're in, how to start the business, what the rules are, what the laws are related to that business development. But so often, in whether it's community involvement, government, education, other things in this world, media, we just jump into things and we don't really spend the time to educate ourselves on what the processes are, how we can best be effective. I know you and I, even in podcasting, we relate to people in podcasting. How can we get better? How can we do things more effectively? So having a hungry heart and a humble heart to get the education that you need, At Christians Engaged, we provide a lot of civic education to help people get involved with local, state, and federal government. And there's just things that people don't know. And so looking for those resources that can really impact your heart and life is the next step, I believe.
So keeping a teachable heart is what I'm hearing you say. And
Yes,
then maybe you would look for somebody who's already in that space and serve them. Would that be the next step?
exactly. Serve them. I was a 32-year-old mom when I started as an intern at Congressman Jeb Hensarling's office. And I was shuffling papers. I was shuffling files of veterans issues and constituent issues, never thinking that 3 months later I would be his campaign manager out of nowhere. But service and really letting God open those doors and learning and being teachable and asking questions, especially young people, sometimes they hold things inside and they don't ask the questions that they need to ask because they're afraid of rejection or afraid that they're not going to be looked at as professional or whatever. Ask questions. People want to know that you want to learn something and that you're humble about it. And then do it. Do it would be the next step, right? Actually step out in faith and walk on the water a little bit. We need some more pioneers out there in America right now that are willing to step out and start businesses, go into new spaces that they've never done, and be willing to walk on the water and get their hands dirty a little bit.
So would you say we need to hold our breath and wait until we've got everything perfectly in order, or just do some research and begin to take action?
I think you learn a lot of times by doing. There's that fine balance, right, between getting enough information and education so that you don't just totally blow something up. Nehemiah had a depth of relationships. He had a depth of knowledge. He understood. I love in I think it's chapter 2 of Nehemiah. He starts talking to the queen. He references that he's even talking to the queen. I can imagine him being in the court of the king and having daily conversations with the queen as she's really bored over what's happening in the court, right? And he built that relationship with her and he valued her opinion and he referenced her even as he was thinking about getting the king's favor to go back to Jerusalem. So relationship building, education, all of that is so important. Prayer, being an intercessor, responding to that burden that you have and actually walking that out, and then just going for it and taking those steps.
Those are great leadership skills that we all need, regardless of how large our sphere of influence might be. Would you say also resilience is another thing that we need to think about? Because things aren't going to always go smoothly or the way that you expect. Even for Nehemiah, things weren't always looking great on the outlook, and we don't always see the results that we want. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh yeah, going back to Nehemiah's story, he had these crazy guys, Sanballat and Tobiah, that were trying to do everything they could to stop the progress, right? And he just put a spear and a sword in everybody's hands, and then he kept the guys working, right? So they were ready for battle, they were prepared, but they were also continuing to work, and he didn't let their voices and their criticisms get him off the wall and off his mission. And so often we hear voices of rejection. We start a business and somebody doesn't want our product that we love, right? We have a friend reject us, or somebody doesn't buy our insurance policy, or we take a step and somebody just doesn't understand what we're doing or why we're doing it. You have to turn those voices off and move forward. But also, yeah, just being prepared for persecution and suffering. I know the American church doesn't want to hear that, but if you're going to pioneer anything or do anything with any lasting value, expect opposition. But on the other side of that opposition is some incredible gold that we can have. And if you talk to any business leader, that's persevered and made their millions, right? It was through deep perseverance and not stopping. And the biggest thing I could say, Tina, is that you can't stop. Many, many times in 16 years of my political career have I wanted to stop. But I had to go back to the call of God on my life and say, God called me into this space and I have something to give that nobody else can give to the people that I know. And so just analyzing that in our own lives and realizing your voice and your activity is making a difference.
What would you say is the most difficult challenge that you faced stepping into political leadership?
Oh, that's a good question. There's been many. When I ran for Congress, I had over $1 million that I raised, and I had over $1 million spent against me. So it was an interesting dynamic. I lost a race by just a couple thousand votes out of 43,000 votes. So it was very close. It was one of the most watched races in Texas in the 2018 primary. But I had to get up every day and I had to keep my eyes on the prize and do what I needed to do. And I thought I was really good at time management before that. I thought I was really good at keeping my goals in front of me. But there's nothing like having to raise $20,000 or $25,000 every day to keep you focused on what you need to do to win. And for me, it was a perseverance of learning how to keep my head down, do what I need to do, realize the call of God on my life. And I prayed John 17 over my life every day, the prayer of Jesus, that he would sanctify me with his word, that, that he would pull me into his love, and just realizing that if you persevere and you keep doing what God's called you to do, that he's going to meet you and empower you with his grace. And I think I've learned that through all these years, that whatever opposition hits you, God's grace is sufficient. He is the good shepherd that is there to pick you up, lay you beside still waters, restore your soul, anoint you for the next season, and keep going. And I think that's part of my story, is just never giving up, never giving up.
That's a great testimony. And I want you to speak a little bit to those who are stepping into leadership and finding that it's very lonely. It can be very isolating to be on. And as a pastor's wife, you know that as well as being in politics. Can you speak to that loneliness in leadership issue and how to deal with that?
That is a great question, Tina. Um, you have to be intentional. You have to be intentional with your time and your life. I mean, even now, my schedule is really crazy, leading a national organization and a team. And, I have to make my family a priority. I have to turn my phone off on the weekends. I have to make my friends a priority. So you have to carve out time, and it's got to be time away from devices where you can really share your heart one to another and you can be real. Valuing even in the busyness, meetings that you're at or places that you go where you meet friends or you see people that you love. And even if you only get 10 minutes with them, to value that time and think of it as a spiritual gift that you've been given, instead of going, man, I wish I could have spent more time with that person. I've kind of learned to just gather up all of the fruit and the love wherever I go, and hopefully pour that into other people, even in short conversations sometimes. But don't judge people. Just really look for places that you can give, and I guarantee you will get life given back to you.
I love that you're advocating for not isolating because it can be easy to be tempted into that. And leaders, especially leaders, need to have people that are supporting them as a team in prayer and in relationship and fellowship.
Amen. Yeah. Having a prayer team around you that keeps you covered. I have one of those. Having your board of directors, whether you run a nonprofit or ministry, be the people that you want to hang out with and you want to walk with. I like to say I gather all my favorite people on my board so that I have time to hang out with them. But really, that we have to do that as leaders, is gather the people around us that feed us and can be that strength to us in these moments. And I know anybody on my leadership, if I called them at any minute, they would jump to do whatever I needed them to do to cover myself and my family. And those are the kind of people you want to have around you, but you can't isolate, and you got to be transparent and open with those people in your life about what's really going on.
Such important insights. And I know that you have more to offer. How can people stay connected with you and get in touch with Christians Engaged?
Yeah, just go to christiansengage.org. Take our pledge to pray, vote, and engage, and we'll help you pray, vote, and engage regularly. Check out all of our classes. The Book of Nehemiah leadership class is on our classes page, and it's a great class. You can get 4 of the first 4 classes for free. So just log in there and get the first 4 videos, and those come with PDF and discussion questions. And we just love to help you anyway. If you feel a burden for America, specifically is our call, we would love to help you in that journey to get plugged in and be leaders wherever God's called you to be.
And tell us a little bit about your book coming out in November.
Yeah, it's called Jesus and Politics. It's going to be published by Charisma Media, Frontline booksellers. It's one woman's walk with God in a mudslinging profession. It's really an intimacy with Jesus book disguised as a political book. But I hope through my story and 16 years in politics, walking beside influential people, that I can share with people how to hear from God, how to walk with God, how to run to the place of prayer in a busy lifestyle, really how to make their life count for eternity. And I think, Tina, to end with, when we all get old and no one cares what we have to say, I'm going to be on my front porch of my East Texas home. I'm going to have one day bass fishing, and I'm going to have my Bible open. I'm going to be hopefully still weeping over the words that Jesus says to me in my heart, because ultimately that's the most important thing. And if we realize as leaders that if we get to walk with Jesus, that's the greatest goal and gift that we can ever have, then that's going to make us even more impactful to the people around us.
If all of you listening were not incredibly inspired by that, I don't know what will do it. Thank you so much, Bunny, and a thank you for listening. I hope that you will go and check out all the resources that Bunny mentioned in this podcast and continue to seek God for how you can lead in this country and in your community. And of course, I also hope that you come back for the next episode of Flourish-Meant. Flourish-Meant is part of the Spark Media Network and can be found on the Edify app.